always express what you want honestly to your employer. They will let you know. Their response will tell you whether there's a chance you're going to move or no, right? Um, it's just like a relationship. Like if you're dating, you want to get to the next level, you want to be a girlfriend, a wife, or whatever. Like you have to have these conversations, and based on the way the person reacts, okay, we're gonna break up, or he doesn't see a future with me. You have to really understand, like, does my employer see a future with me, and are they willing to work towards that future? Are we on the same page? If we're not, then it's time to move on, and they will understand. They have to understand. This is the great thing about just having
Life.
options and being an employee and being able to move and to grow, because as an employee, we have our part that we have to do. We have to do our job well. We have to be team players. We have all these things we have to do. But as the employer, they also have things they have to meet you. They also have to try to keep you as well and retain you.
All right, guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the HR Heroes podcast. I'm incredibly excited because I have Kellyann with me here today. Kellyann, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Keena. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be a cool experience because we're going to talk about, your journey in HR. We're going to talk about the entrepreneurial spirit that you've been able to kind of observe as you were growing up with your parents owning their own business, the transition, your father being an HR leader and kind of inspiring you at a young age, which I feel like is going to be really cool. But before we kind of dive into that, I want to ask you a personal question. How is your heart doing today?
My heart is good today. I feel good. Life is good. The weather is great. I can't complain at all.
It's really cool to be able to kind of ask that question because I feel like it's a little bit deeper than the how are you? I'm fine, because when we think about the heart of ourselves, often we have so much going on in life that it's easy to get caught up in the negative stuff. And I love being able to hear people's response to that question because it's a little bit more gratitude based, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I'm big on gratitude. Like I'm big on like mindfulness, gratitude, that type of stuff. So yes, I appreciate that.
Why do you focus on gratitude so much? Why is that something that's so important to you?
I'm someone who's like super anxious and worries a lot about things and find myself like going down a rabbit hole a lot mentally. So like about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I really I read the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and like I kind of started getting into the mindfulness space, focusing on the now, not worrying about the future, all that stuff. And then the gratitude part of it came in, and then just like, yeah, just being mindful, and being grateful. Like when you approach life from a space of gratitude, things look so much better than if you don't. So there are some people. I had a friend who her therapist asked her like, what name a few things that you're grateful for, and she couldn't think of anything. And gratitude is literally just being grateful for being alive, being able to breathe. Like just sit. People think it has to be some big thing. It's just really little things that add up to like this big happy feeling.
This is something that I worry about in our generation because it seems like, I'm not sure if it's social media or the other things that we kind of engage with, but it seems like people have a tougher time having gratitude for the small stuff more than ever.
Right.
Why do you think that is, especially with kind of the younger generation, everybody else who's kind of like in our age demographic?
Yeah, because that's what you said. Like with social media, they're looking at people their age or be younger than them, like flossing and showing all this great life, and they don't realize that social media is just not real. People show their happiest moments. Like we only really show our happiest moments on social media. Like if I'm sick or not doing well, no one will know if I don't post about it. But of course, I'm going to post when I'm happy and joyful. And so, like you said, there's a lot of comparison on social media, and then people look at other people's lives and then fail to be grateful for the things that they have, or what they perceive that other people have, right? Because we see people, they're happy couples online and smiling, and next week they're divorced, and you're like, what? So it's really hard, I think, to be able to focus on yourself when you're like constantly watching others. Yeah.
One of the things I thought was really cool was kind of because you were born in the late 80s, I was born in the early 90s. We came from a place where we experienced the before time. And I feel like our generation, especially, is so lucky because we grew up running around in the streets, going to middle school, going to high school before
Yeah.
all of these kind of social pressures popped up. So, do you feel like, and this is a little bit of a personal question, do you feel like social media in itself is kind of a detriment to society today? Or do you think it's got powerful goods and powerful evils? What's kind of your perspective on it?
I think it has so many positives, but definitely so many negatives, right? So, like, even I was thinking, like, okay, when I have kids, I don't think I'll be giving them a cell phone for until they're like a teenager or older. Like, I don't, and I'm going to not have them on social media. Like, even because even as an adult, like, we are supposed to be mature and have self-control, but even for us it's difficult to manage social media. Like, we find ourselves scrolling and on social media for hours, right? So if I'm an adult and it's hard for me to manage, I can't even imagine being a child. So, like, even for me personally, I have to actively manage my social media intake. So all my friends know, like, in the week, I literally delete Instagram. I delete the app every Sunday and download it again every Friday. Because I said social media, Instagram is a weekend activity. Because sometimes if I don't cut myself off, I find myself like, as soon as I wake up, it's the first thing I open. As soon, when I'm so and like sometimes I open the phone and my hand is my fingers literally just going straight to Instagram or whatever. I don't have TikTok because I refuse to add anymore. So I only have Instagram. I don't have Facebook, only Instagram and LinkedIn. And so yeah, I just have to you have to really manage the social media intake, or else it can really mess with you mentally, emotionally, and just like be such a big distraction. But on the other hand, it's like you learn so much from social media. Every Friday when I go back on Instagram, I catch up on like everything that's happening in the world.
It's a really interesting time to kind of be in this place between tug and pull because we want to be informed, but we don't want to be
Right.
misinformed. We don't want to be exposed, but we don't want to be
Right.
underexposed. And it's
Right.
just a really interesting time. There was a really cool study that I heard about a couple weeks ago. There was this guy who was a psychiatrist, and he went out and did a study with 600,000 middle school and high school students. And he basically surveyed them all and asked a question: do you use Netflix? They said, everybody raised their hand. Yeah. Do you use, or do you wish that that was never invented? Nobody raised their hand because everybody likes using Netflix. Do you
Right.
use Instagram or TikTok? Everybody raised their hand. Do you wish that those platforms were never invented? They said yes. And so they talk about, from a younger age demographic perspective, I wish these things were never invented, but I feel so bad not participating because I have a feeling of FOMO. And I
Right.
know when I was in my young 20s, I dealt with a lot of feelings of FOMO because I didn't want to be missing out on things.
Right.
But we have to think about kind of the tug and the pull mentality that these platforms create in our lives, because if they're not giving us good things, it's almost like our brain is addicted. That lizard brain, the ancient
Yes.
brain that we have, is like addicted to seeing negative stuff. And I feel
Yes.
like I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about the validation process. So much in our society today is based on other people's opinions, other
Right.
people's double tap, their like, their hearts, their comments, things like that. And we get so much dopamine from that that it seems like we miss that human connection. Because I feel
Mhm.
like when we were younger, we had the ability to hang out with our friends. We didn't have social media. So when you wanted to talk to your friends, you called them, you texted them, you hung
And
out in
not
a simple
cameras
place.
everywhere recording everything. Like,
That's
they
right.
record everything now. You can't even be a teen or a young adult in peace.
I know. It's a really tough time. And I feel like, here's a question for you. Would you ever get a phone that wasn't a smartphone, but we go back to like the flip phone razor where you can just like send text and do that type of stuff?
Oh, oh no.
Okay. I
No.
wanted to ask that because I feel like there's a time where like the pendulum's swinging back the other direction and people are going to start going back to like those Nokia brick phones that we grew up
Right?
that were indestructible. You know what I mean?
That's why I love like do not disturb on my phone, so I can't be disturbed. But I do like having other apps. Like I have the Calm app. I have other, like calming good apps. But yeah, I don't think I would go back to the old school.
Maybe that boundary is a little bit too extreme. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's too
Because I
extreme. But
like,
I'm
I like your strategy of kind of deleting the apps on Sundays and downloading them again on Fridays.
yes,
Because one thing that I notice about my subconscious is I've built the habit of going to my phone. And so even in the moments where I'm just like a little bit not, I would say, invigorated or excited about doing work,
Right.
I go back to the device. And it's a really
Mm-hmm.
interesting kind of habit that we've built up. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just a really interesting time to kind of be battling with this feeling of technology and the dependence on it, which I feel like is really interesting.
Yeah.
So as we kind of get into the episode today, I want to ask you a question that came from our previous guest. Now, HR, we do a lot of employee engagement and engaging with different generations of people
Mm-hmm.
from boomers, X, traditionalists, Gen Z, millennials, everything that's going on. So her question for you was, how do you as an HR leader engage with your team and keep them engaged, even if it means that you're engaging with different types of generations?
One really cool way to do that is like to create like a group, right? So create like well, we call it all type of different things in different companies, but like basically just engagement group of different representatives of different like age groups, different, just different types of groups of people to come together and like plan things, like plan events or discuss things that are important to them, and we could engage in that way, say, oh, you want to do a picnic, a company picnic, but we can make sure that we have representatives of each group so that we can have different, little features and factor in everyone's like things that they're interested in, So maybe the younger generation wants video games, or the older generation wants like more traditional board games, but like everyone can have an input. So I think that's the best way, is just really getting different groups of people together to, you know, to really relate to each other. Each age group, they have different experiences, as we've said, but I think at the fundamental level, like we're still humans, we still, we're in this workspace that we clearly we have something in common. We're still, so just kind of connect on the commonalities and then learn from each other with like their differences, but then learn to appreciate the differences as well.
Yeah, bring everybody into the same environment, let them share their human experience and their different
Right.
perspectives. Is I feel like such a powerful thing, because when we talk about the multi-generational workforce, being able to bring people together and just have them share knowledge and different perspectives, I feel like is a superpower.
Yes.
And when we have the ability to share time together, we get different insights, different preferences and stuff like that, which I
Yes.
feel like is just so powerful. One of the things that I really want to dive into is kind of your personal story about how you discovered HR as being your journey. And I know that you spent time as being an accountant, if I'm correct, back in the
Yes, in
day. And you
accounting. Yeah.
said that this wasn't for me, but you also had some family experiences where your dad was an HR leader as well. So let's kind of talk about your journey and your dad's influence on you.
So, let me start. Where can I start? Okay. So, well, I went to undergrad. I did University of Florida. I did bachelor's in just general like business management, but we did have an HR course, and I really enjoyed that class. And then when I left school, left undergrad, I went to work somewhere where it was just like they were just hiring recent grads and letting them learn different parts of their business, and then eventually you land where you land. And so that's what I did. And I landed in accounting, accounts payable for whatever. That was what was available at the time when I got there. So I was doing that and I hated it. It was just a never ending pile of invoices for me to enter into this accounting system every day. And like as soon as I felt like, okay, I've finished this pile, they brought another pile from like the warehouse. It was terrible. Hated it. Um, but it was good experience because I learned like I really learned how to read invoices, and especially for like in HR when I have to audit benefits bills or different invoices that we get, like those things, all those things come together, like in the future now I can see how it was helpful, but in the moment I hated it. And so then I did some soul searching, and then I was like, oh, what would what would I actually enjoy? And by that time, it was like I was maybe a year and a half out of undergrad, and my parents were kind of like in my ear, oh, you need to go to grad school, blah blah blah. So I was like, what am I going to study? And so I did like a Google search. I know that I was always writing resumes for free for my friends, always giving like interview advice, those type of things. So I'm like, Googled that, and then it said, like, okay, that could be a career in HR. And then it really just like, oh yeah, that's true. And then, my dad, he was a personnel manager for when he in his younger years for many years, mostly in banking. Um, so I did know that okay, HR, was aware of HR, and so it seemed like a good path. So then I went to I did my master's in HR, and I totally enjoyed it. I was super happy, like I really found something that I enjoyed. And then, I just started out in my career just real green. And then I had such an interest. I was always reading, always, trying to learn more. And then I was able to just kind of quickly grow in, in the field, like, went from like just very entry level to director level, like in a pretty short time compared to a lot of other people, just because like I believed in myself, and I also like it's my passion. It's something I'm really good at this. Just I don't know. I just found like I used to dread going to work when I was doing accounting and all those other jobs, but in HR, I love going to work. I don't obviously there's still challenges in every role, but it's not like on a Sunday I'm like, oh, I have to go to work. Like even the challenges excite me. So I, I have this passion for work that I want everyone to have. So at one point I had started a blog called Kellyann HR because Lane was my maiden name. And I did resume writing, career coaching, and just I had this blog where just trying to inspire people to incorporate their passion into their work life, even if it's not exactly a match, like just incorporate it in some way. So if you, like I said, if you like sports, but you're not like going to go to play in the NFL, but you do like football, you could work for an NFL league. You could, even if you work in accounting, but you like sports, you could work in an accounting department in a sports team. So just ways like that to incorporate your passion into your work life, because if you love what you do, you're going to be happy. And it's like such a great feeling. I don't know. It's like I wish I could just bottle it and give it to everybody. So that's what I do. I like to also ask people, like when I meet them, I'm like, okay, what do you do? And then when they tell me, I say, okay, what would you really like to be doing? So I meet people, they're like, oh, I'm a nurse practitioner, but I really would love to be an interior designer. Like, I just love to see how far apart like people's actual passions are from their work. So it's
Isn't it
really
crazy to
cool.
think about that?
Yeah.
When you ask people that question, why do you think so many of us get so off path with the process? I have a theory. One of my theories is when you're 18 years old, 17 years old, you graduate from high school. The next month
Hmm.
we go to college and you're asked pick a path for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
aka pick your classes, pick your career. But
Right.
1 month ago, we were saying you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. It seems like a
Right.
lot of responsibility to put on a
Yes.
17 or an 18-year-old. And then we go down this path. Do you think it's almost like we've put in so much time that we're scared to
Yes. To
switch and
try
kind of
something
chase our
else.
dream?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then they get people get discouraged too, because like their parents will tell them, "Oh, you're not going to make, someone wants to be like a painter. Oh, you're never going to make any money doing that. Go be a doctor, go be a lawyer." But in my opinion, it's like if you're passionate enough and you're really good, you're going to make money doing whatever you decide to do. Like that's why you have chefs who are exceptional and doing very well. You have painters who are doing really well. You have even like barbers who are making millions of dollars. They start their own business, like super successful on like TikTok and Instagram because they're creative. They found, they paved that path for themselves. So like mentors, parents, they need to stop discouraging children from pursuing the things that they're actually passionate about, and just, introduce them to things that just encourage their passions, right? And that's why like representation is so important, like seeing other successful people doing things that they want to do, right? Not just seeing doctors, lawyers, finance people all the time, like seeing different careers, seeing different people doing different things, have them come speak at the school, stuff like that. So yeah, that's
I mean,
kind
the
of been
game
my
has
journey.
the game has completely changed. I mean, one of
Yes,
the things that we're going to
exactly.
talk about in a little bit is like our generation grew up in, I heard this really interesting conversation. It was talking about millennials specifically. So, our demographic was we were taught when we were younger, for the majority of us, that we could do anything. We could change the world. We're like the Mark Zuckerberg of
Yes,
Facebook generation. You can create a business and change the world.
yes.
And it seems like now, because there is so little perceived efficacy by Gen Z, as an example, that
Hmm.
they feel like somebody's going to come save them. And it's very
Hmm.
interesting to kind of think about from a perspective, because I'm not sure if it's projection from parents who said, hey, don't go down that path because you're not going to be successful. And it
Hmm.
reminds me of this really cool quote. I was watching this college commencement speech by Jim Carrey the other day. So, Jim Carrey, the comedian,
Yeah.
Dumb and Dumber, he was talking about an early experience he had with his dad. And his dad was an accountant. And
Hmm.
this is very similar to your story.
Hmm.
He said his dad, when he's told him, hey, dad, I want to be a comedian, he said, you're never going to do that because you'll never make money. And so he decided on his own he was going to chase his dream of becoming a comedian. His dad
Hmm.
never supported him. Later in life, he became famous and launched Dumb and Dumber and things like that, and actually made his dream come true.
Hmm.
Years later, when he was successful, his father got fired as an accountant and took it really hard. And he
Yeah.
said, the one thing that I learned was you can fail in two ways. You can either fail at doing something that you hate, or you can
Hmm.
fail at doing something that you love. And that's a lesson
Right.
that he's always carried with him. And so it just kind of
Exactly.
reemphasizes the importance of chasing your dreams and at least being willing to die on the sword that you chose instead of somebody else's. And I feel like, especially with our generation, we have so many people who are unhappy in their work that it's so heartbreaking to see, because you're only young for so long. And
Right.
that fear of regret when you're older is going to be really, really heavy.
Yeah, and I think also like you have mentioned, my parents do own a business. They for over 30 years they've owned a plantation shutter manufacturing business. So plantation shutters are window treatment, and they're at the time when they did go out and do that, the thing was, oh, go to college, get a job, stay there for till you retire, and that's the life, right? So they did go to college, but my dad, like I said, he just was not. They weren't happy doing that. They didn't want to work for people anymore. They didn't want to. He didn't want to have to dress up in suits every day. He wanted to wear jeans, and they've been wearing jeans and to work for as long as I can remember. Like they created a path for themselves. But at the time, like entrepreneurship is cool now, but it was not cool back in like the late 80s, early 90s. That wasn't the thing. That was so for them to push and go out and do something like that without, there was not any internet. There were like the technology wasn't even there at that time. Like for them to push out and do something like that, create their own path. It was not very popular with even with their family, their friends. Um, but now it's cool and it's the thing. So kind of seeing them like they were brave, they went out, they did that. Like they have a whole different mindset too than most parents that I know of, like my friends' parents. Whatever, they were always encouraging us to follow what we are passionate about. They were very open minded about things like that, and they also gave me like that spirit where I'm someone who doesn't stay at a role or stay anywhere where I'm not happy or uh, you know things aren't well. Like they've always given me, I guess, growing up like that, like I have this confidence to go out and do what I need to do to leave. Like I was never scared to leave anywhere. Change doesn't bother me like in that way. Like if I need to move to something, a better opportunity, I'm going to do that.
You value
Whereas some
yourself.
parents, right? Whereas a lot of parents tell their kids, "Don't leave yet, stay." No, My parents have always coached me in like a very in a different way, but in a good way, because they have that entrepreneurial mindset. And I've also, as an HR person, like seen them run a business and deal with their employees and things like that. It has helped me in how I am as an HR person because I see both sides of the spectrum. I saw both sides. So I am for the employees, and I'm also I understand how hard it is to run a business. We go to work, at the end of the day we go to bed, like we're not even worried. But the your employer, they're the ones who have to worry. If something happens in the middle of the night, it's their business, it's their responsibility to ensure that they can pay you, everything like that. So it's also a big burden, and employee carries a big burden as well. But I can see from both sides how our business is run and how to treat your people.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I thought about while you were telling that story was accountability. It seems like if you want to chase your dreams, you also have to kind of true up with the sense of accountability of what it really takes. When you're a business owner, as an example, like your parents, it's like, hey, we have to be accountable for everything: payroll,
Right.
culture, the business running. If there's a problem, I
Exactly.
have to be the janitor to do all
Sales,
of that kind of stuff.
everything, bringing in the work, right? Everything. If anything happens overnight, like someone, they have a factory, someone breaks in, like that's their responsibility. We'll be asleep, but they'll be up trying to figure out how to keep things afloat. So an entrepreneur, they romanticize and make being an entrepreneur look so sexy nowadays, and they're like telling everyone to be an entrepreneur, and I don't believe in that either. Like, I believe that let people do what they want to do and follow. Not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, because like I said, there's so much pressure with just being an entrepreneur. Yes, it allows you certain freedoms and things like that, but it also is also a shackle as well. It's not just a great big freedom. It's a lot of work. Some people just like don't want that burden. They want to just go to work, make a decent living, go home, be with their families. Like, everyone has different aspirations. So the fact that they keep like pushing entrepreneurship down everyone's throat and making people like, oh, you're lazy if you don't hustle and stay up all night and work and don't sleep. Like, it's not for everybody. And not everybody, I mean, if everyone is the employer, who is going to be the employee? Like, we have to just meet people where they are and allow them to be who they are. And if entrepreneurship is not for you, it's just not for you. But don't try to make other people feel bad that they don't want to take on the burden of being an entrepreneur, because it's really hard.
It is. I mean, 99% of small businesses fail. And
Yes.
I was at a business conference a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about my journey because I was working a 9 to 5 job installing office furniture like
Mhm.
desks and cubicles and stuff in the Las Vegas heat back in 2013. And I didn't want to do that. And so I went home and spoke to my father, who was also an entrepreneur, like we talked about. And I said, hey, I want to start a job. And I was telling people this story, and they said, oh, yeah, you made the classic mistake of trading your 9 to 5 for a 24/7 365. And I was like, you
Exactly.
know what? I did. And it's just something that you have to be okay with, but it's not
Yes.
always the dream for everybody. And I do agree
Exactly.
with you. Social media pushes this sexy version of what
Hmm.
people are supposed to be without the true sense of, I would say, awareness of realizing, is this the hustle that I really want? For a lot of
Exactly.
us, it's not. And so I kind of want to use that as a segue to talk about the younger generation. So Gen Z gets talked about like entitled a lot, especially by boomers. Why do you think that's a bad, I would say, rap for this generation?
Yeah, so like I told you before, like, I don't think they're entitled at all. I just think that they're confident, they're informed, they're educated, and they just have options. They have a lot of options, and they know it. I don't think they're entitled. I think they're very smart. I personally love working with Gen Zers. They just have a whole different perspective, and they're just they're just so good with technology, and they're just so like creative and cool. Like, they're really cool. They're super cool kids. Like, they're so cool. So yeah, the boomers, they grew up a whole different complete way from these young people, and they're it's like hard for them to wrap their head around, like, how can someone lay around all day or just post on Instagram all day and be a millionaire and bring in six figures over and whatever. But they have cracked the code on how to make money but also live the soft life. And I don't think anything is wrong with that.
I feel like we have to get rid of this innate nature for us to quickly judge others, because
Exactly.
judgment it's so easy in today's society. And it seems like it's an easy reflex for a lot of us. If it's millennials versus Gen Z, or Gen X versus millennials, or
Right.
traditionalists versus boomers, it's just a habit that we've gotten into. And I really want to see that end, because
Exactly.
judgment in itself is a terrible first reaction when we come across somebody with a different lived experience. I was talking
Exactly.
to
Mhm.
a HR leader yesterday, and she was talking about the superpower of Gen Z is their agility and adaptability. Imagine
Exactly.
going to school and living the life that we all lived, going to high school in person, and then all of a sudden a world pandemic shuts everything down and you have to now go to school via Zoom. Then you go into the workforce, you can't go to internships, but you have to do all of that stuff virtually as well.
Right.
They are so adaptable. and they recognize there's so many ways to skin the cat that I feel like we need to start
Exactly.
looking at them as the future leaders who can get anything done rather than being so judgmental about what they can't do because we didn't have the same experience.
Exactly. And like you said, not judging, because just because to you it looks easy, oh, they're an influencer. Being an influencer is not easy, or it's all of us would be doing it. Like, I'd be on TikTok doing whatever I do if it was easy. Like, everybody's path. I think someone said, choose your heart. Like, everything is hard when you look at it, but you have to just choose your heart. So don't just judge someone thinking they're just, getting by, skating by. Like, everybody has their own struggles, and everybody has their own hard.
One of the things that, because we're talking about hard, I want to use the inverse, which is soft. So I want to talk about soft skills. I know that we as millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha that's coming into the space, seems like we have a lot more awareness around the soft skills of leadership like empathy, compassion, curiosity, tenacity, kind candor, which is something I'm a huge fan of. Why do
Hmm.
you think soft skills, coined, if you will, by Gary Vaynerchuk, is something that's becoming so popular today in the world?
You know, because like you said, the workforce is changing, the world is changing, like, and then like the type of work that we're doing is just is changing. Like, there's no need to be mean to others, to shout at your employees. Like I tell people all the time, literally nobody's dying. I mean, like, if you work in a hospital, yes, somebody may be dying, but like in the world that we're doing, no one is dying. If something is late, it will be okay. It can be fixed. And just be, like, in general, like, the world has become more hyper aware of like mental health issues, and just how those things affect many different areas, and just like emotional intelligence has become a big thing. So that movement to, management, like the management style being more empathetic and kind, which I think it should have just always been like that from the beginning. But yes, there has definitely been a shift in that. Also, these younger generations coming in, they're you're not going to scare them with these like scare tactics that you've used in the past, like has been used in the past, like shouting at employees and threatening them. Like, it's not going to work. So it doesn't even make sense that you do that. So the best way to retain talent and keep people happy is to be kind, be empathetic, allow for flexibility, like realize that we're all humans, and we all have different things going on. So the better you are to employees in that way, it will just be better overall, like for your whole business operation, and just like an employer of choice. Like, your employees are going to go out and speak good things about your company, and then that will make other people want to come to your company. And just it's all a part of being an employer of choice. That's just one part of it, but it's a big part.
It is. No, I totally agree. I want to kind of dive into a couple of the 12 and a half ingredients from Gary Vaynerchuk's book, and I want to kind of get your perspective on them. What do you think about curiosity being a leadership style, and how would you kind of deploy curiosity with your team?
So curiosity, in my opinion, like, I am always like, oh, so I message. I'm like, I'm curious. I want to know. Like, I'm super curious. I want to know just not just the result, but how do you get to that result? Like, what was the story behind that? So, and just trying to understand like how my employees, like people that report to me, how they think, and just being curious about how can I help you to move forward? Like, just trying to be just learning them, not just like at work, but just being curious about them, their life, who they are, what their interests are. When is your birthday? Like, I'm a very like curious person, not just like learning work things, but also like learning the people that I work with.
I love that. What about kind candor? Now, I like to put kind in front of candor because candorous is being able to have tough conversations,
Yes.
but being able to leverage kindness in that, I feel like is a superpower. So, how do you think about kind candor?
So yeah, so like in HR, that's something I have to do, like not just in managing performance or anything like that, but like just having tough conversations is a part of being an HR person. So like even something as small as having to discuss someone's body odor or things like that. You have to discuss those things with people. and you just let them, I truly believe in being relatable, being kind, but also being honest, right? So this is the truth. This is the honest truth of what's going on in this situation. But, I try to let them know, it's okay. Like, you're not the only one this has ever happened to, or, you're not the only one that's ever been in this situation. And if there are situations where I even, if that's something that happened to me, I will relate to them in that way and say, I experienced this, but this is how I got over that. And, just being kind, like putting like a human touch to things, it really does help. Like, yes, the truth is going to hurt no matter what, but I think if you can just be kind, like in the way that you deliver things. And then also let, employees know all the time, like, okay, yes, this time you're the one that, was reported or that's whatever, but like, just know that I'm here for you. So if the situation was reversed and there was anything you needed to come to me about, you could always, I'll always have your back, and, I can be there as a resource for you as well. So yeah, I agree. Like, you can be honest, but there's a way to go about doing that.
How about this last one, which is optimism? So I've been messing around with a framework in my
Mhm.
head recently, which is practical optimism. Have you ever heard the saying, life is 90% or 10% what happens to you and 90% how
10%
you
how you
react to it?
respond, yes.
That's right. So
That's
I've
one
been
of
thinking
my
about,
favorite ones.
okay, perfect. So I think about practical optimism by being able to say, I have the choice to react to all these situations. And being optimistic is a choice, but you can be
Mhm.
practical about it. It doesn't mean that you're toxically positive, which I hear a lot these days.
Yes.
So, what do you think about practical optimism?
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Like, you right, not toxic positivity where just, oh, it's all rainbows, butterflies. No, you're going to be practical, as in, yes, there are challenges, but we're going to face these challenges with a positive attitude and with the mindset of resolving things and moving forward, right? We're not going to just act like ignore the problem, oh, la la la, like it's Barbie world. No, we're going to approach, like that's how life is. Like you said, it's 90% how you respond, which is something I had that quote on my desk like years ago too. Right, life is like, things will happen, but let's approach them in a way that's positive, that's healthy, that's going to, like, let's work on a solution. So
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that we have in my company is we have a value of ultimate accountability. And one of the things that I use through the lens of ultimate accountability is when things go wrong, it's easy for us to cast the blame towards others, but it's also easier for us to say, how do we own this and take the power away from everyone else? Because it's
mhm,
easy to sometimes cast the blame away and point the finger.
mhm.
But when you point the finger, you forget about the three fingers that are pointed back at you.
Okay.
And so it's very easy for us to do that. And so I always think about the sense of accountability that we can leverage in kind of being the creator of our own world and how we
Mhm.
choose to respond, which is 90% of life, which I think is so cool.
Yes.
As we kind of wrap here today, I would like for you to maybe think about, do you have a story or a little anecdote that you can give to somebody else who is the younger version of Kellyann, who's saying, I want to get into HR? How can you inspire them to kind of go down this path and end up as happy and as optimistic as you are?
How can I inspire? Let me see. Anecdote. So, what I can say is just to always be ready for your next opportunity, right? So, I've always encouraged, like, I have, through SHRM, I have mentees. So, every couple months, I get a new mentee. So, I always encourage them, have your resume always updated, have your LinkedIn, post things, positive things, show that you're doing, what you're doing, that you're excelling at work. Like, it doesn't have to be like some big fancy post. It can just be some pictures from a work event that you planned. Like, just keep pushing out positive things about your career and like your thoughts, because even if you don't get a lot of likes, people are still seeing, people are watching. They'll know you, they'll see you. Like, keep doing that. Like, be ready for your next opportunity, always be learning, get involved with SHRM or any other HR group, that your local SHRM chapter, like, just always be ready. Just be ready. That's all I tell somebody. Be ready for your next opportunity. You just don't know where it's going to come from. Just always learn, always grow. And yeah, have a mentor, like reach out to people that have been in your position before and learn how they grew in their roles. But the real thing is just to always be ready for your next opportunity, and network, and just really get yourself out there. Just get yourself out there and be ready. That's it.
If you stay ready, you ain't got to
You
get
gotta
ready.
get ready. Exactly. When people say, I always say like, oh, I hear about a role. They're like, oh, I have to update my resume. No, that should have been. And they're like, oh, what if my employer knows? I said, there's not you're not trapped anywhere. You have options. Like, your employer is not like you always have to be ready for your next opportunity. That's just how life is. And to get to the next level, not everyone is lucky enough to be at one company forever and just get all these promotions and move up, move up, move up. It's just not realistic. You have to be ready to move somewhere else, to get that pay increase, to get more experience. Like, one time I was an HR generalist, and I killed it. Like, I was killing it. I did all this great work all year, took on so many projects. And then, at the end of the year, I was like, okay, I was telling my boss, maybe I could get, like, maybe change my title just to like senior generalist, just let me feel like, some type of movement up. And then she was just like, she looked at me and she said, Kelly, it's just that generalist role. That's really just what it is. Like, so obviously, when you tell me that, I'm not going to be like, oh, okay, and just go sit back at my desk. I'm like, okay, in my mind, I go, okay, and now it's time to move on. Because if I just stayed there all these years, then I would never be where I am now. So you also, always express what you want honestly to your employer. They will let you know. Their response will tell you whether there's a chance you're going to move or no, right? Um, it's just like a relationship. Like, if you're dating, you want to get to the next level, you want to be a girlfriend, a wife, or whatever. Like, you have to have these conversations, and based on the way the person reacts, okay, we're gonna break up, or he doesn't see a future with me. You have to really understand, like, does my employer see a future with me, and are they willing to work towards that future? Are we on the same page? If we're not, then it's time to move on. And they will understand. They have to understand. This is the great thing about just having
Life.
options and being an employee and being able to move and to grow. Because as an employee, we have our part that we have to do. We have to do our job well. We have to be team players. We have all these things we have to do. But as the employer, they also have things they have to meet you. They also have to try to keep you as well and retain you. So if it's not working, then it's time.
It is what
I
it
know,
is.
yeah. It is what it
Yeah.
is.
That's right. Well, I think this has been an amazing conversation, Kelly. It's been such a blessing to be able to spend time with you and hear about your
Yeah.
journey, talk about all the things that we did, the mindset, the optimism, the kind candor, being able to hear about your parents' journey, how it wasn't cool in the back in the day to be an entrepreneur because everybody said you don't have a job and you're probably broke. But really what people were doing is they were building their dreams, and now
Yep.
they're the beneficiaries of that. But once again, like you pointed out, that's not for everybody. And I feel like it's important for us to realize kind of what our personal journey looks like and pursue that with everything that we have, because
Yeah.
that's all that's really important. I want to use the last couple seconds here to give you the opportunity to pose a question for our next guest. So, what do you got
Um,
for us, Kelly?
and so I came up with one. It's just like, what does the future of HR look like, and how can we best prepare for it?
I love that. That's beautiful. Well, I can't wait for our next guest to answer that question. Once again, Kelly, I think you did such a great job on the podcast. I'm so proud to be able to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for
Thanks
this.
for having
And
me,
guys,
Keenan.
that's been another episode of the HR Heroes podcast. That's a wrap.
Yay!
There you go. That was great. Oh, that was perfect.